السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
How are you, Sidi Suhail? Assalamu alaikum, Sidi Sharif.
Walaikum salam. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, inshallah.
Sorry I wasn't able to make it last week.
No worries, no worries. Alhamdulillah, we missed you.
My wife was in town, so.
Nice, mashallah. Alhamdulillah.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. How are you, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
How is the weather in Boston these days?
Alhamdulillah, it was nice and it was very nice and warm yesterday, sunny. Today is a little overcast. Alhamdulillah. How about in California?
California, last week it was really warm, it was hot. This week is back to normal.
So back to perfect weather.
Let me see. Okay, Bismillah. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Fine.
And I'm just going to put the slides in the chat,
Okay.
and I'll also upload it to the Basira page, inshallah. It may have already been done, but just in case.
Okay.
Okay, ready when you are, Sidi.
I'm ready when you are. Yes.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Welcome back, everyone. Not too many announcements. I think just a quick point about review sessions. Last week there was some confusion over the review, whether there was one planned or not. This week, inshallah, we'll confirm this, but hope inshallah it will be Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then there were some people from the general group that also had reached out about having a review session. So I'm personally just frankly a little maxed out with time, but I'm going to try to make some time this week, inshallah, so we can have a general review session for all participants. So I will post that to the Basira page, and I'm not able to post the slides personally to the Basira page, so hopefully we'll have those shortly, inshallah. With that, I don't think there's anything else to mention, so I'll pass the mic to you, Sidi.
Allah Yabarak Fikum. Did you start the live stream?
Yep, live stream has started and recording has started, so we're ready to go.
Amen. Okay. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Inshallah. Alaikum salam. Today we'll begin with session 5. So بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد. Session 5 of Umur aammah. So today inshallah we'll cover quiddity, ما هي. Mainly we will go over on quiddity, what is ما هي. And we'll be reading from Taftazani's تهذيب الكلام. And we'll touch a little bit on the ontological essence versus the logical essence. And then we'll go into the different aspects of quiddity. لا بشرط شيء بشرط لا كل الطبيعي. And then on quiddity appearing as a part, as a madda, and highlights. So basically what we attempted to cover toward the end of last session, we'll expand on today, inshallah. So all right. So our session today will cover a section from Taftazani's تهذيب الكلام called Al-Mahiyya. Imam Taftazani, rahimahullah ta'ala, began by saying, ماهية الشيء ما به يجاب عن السؤال بما هو. I've also added a section from E.G. جواهر الكلام. ثم لكل شيء حقيقة هو بها هو، وهي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي، فليست من حيث هي أحد النقيضين، لا أنها من حيث هي ليست. That's from E.G. And then Taftazani continued on اعتبارات الماهية. So on the different aspects of consideration of quiddity, and he talked about ماهية الشيء بشرط شيء وبشرط لا شيء ولا بشرط شيء. بشرط شيء i.e. conditioned by something. وتسمى المخلوطة قال. It's called mixed. وبشرط لا شيء this is negatively conditioned. It's called مجردة. It's called divested. ولا بشرط شيء or with no condition. This is indeterminate. It's like it's مبهمة. وهي أعم من المخلوطة. And also أعم من المجردة. And then he touched upon الكل الطبيعي. And then he touched upon that الماهية بشرط لا شيء تكون مادة للشخص. And I've added this corollary here. فيمتنع الحمل على المجموع لانتفاء شرطه, which is mentioned in many books. It is also mentioned in the commentary, as we will see. So, Imam Taftazani began by saying, ماهية الشيء ما به يجاب عن السؤال بما هو. Quiddity of a thing is that which is mentioned in answer to the question, what is it? Sidi Harun, are we going to have Justin here today?
He's not here today. He had a death in the family, unfortunately. I just found out.
Oh, subhanallah. Rahimahullah. All right. Okay. So this is the commentary by Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Sanandaji on Tahzib al-Kalam. Taftazani says, فصل ماهية الشيء ما به يجاب عن السؤال بما هو. قال الإمام الشارح رحمه الله تعالى فصل في الماهية. قال فصل في الماهية أخر مباحثها عن مباحث الوجود. أخر مباحثها عن مباحث الوجود والعدم لأن البحث عنها من حيث إنها صالحة لمعروضية أحدهما. قال من حيث إنها صالحة لمعروضية أحدهما أي لمعروضية الوجود والعدم أحدهما. فهما عارضان وهي معروضة. المعروض هو الماهية والعارض هو الوجود أو العدم. وهي بهذا الاعتبار يعني أحيانا يعرض لها شيء وأحيانا لا يعرض عليها شيء فتؤخذ هكذا ذهنيا. قال وهي بهذه الاعتبار متأخرة عنهما بهذا الاعتبار من حيث كونها معروضة أي بهذا الاعتبار لا تصير معروضة إلا إذا عرض لها. لكن من حيث هي ما هي لابد أن تكون سابقة عليهما لأن العارض لا يعرض للعدم. قال وهي لفظة مأخوذة عما هو. Now he's talking about the origin of the word ماهية. Where does it come from? قال هي لفظة مأخوذة عما هو. ماهية is derived from ما هو. So if we were to expand on this a little bit, let me see if I can go in here. Yeah. قال الماهية الماهية أصلها ما هو. So we have this L here دخلت على ما هو، لكن L لا تدخل إلا على الأسماء. And ما هو originally is a جملة. ما هو is a جملة, is a sentence, is a statement. فال لا تدخل إلا على الأسماء. ما هو is مبتدأ وخبر, is subject and predicate. لكن we transformed ما هو from being a جملة to being one word. ما هو. ما هو is no longer a جملة, became one word. It's a complex structure. ما هو. And then L now is eligible to precede ما هو, because ما هو is no longer a جملة, is an اسم. And then we added الياء. ياء مشددة. And this ياء is, as you know, it's called ياء المصدر الصناعي. ياء المصدر الصناعي. Its role is to transform الاسم إلى معنى. To transform الذات إلى حدث. فتحول الاسم إلى معنى وتحول الذات إلى حدث. فمثلا عندي إنسان أزيد عليه الياء فأقول إنسانية. إنسانية. عندي ما وراء أقول ما ورائية. فهذه الياء هي تحول الاسم إلى معنى، تحول الذات إلى حدث. فصارت الماهو صارت الماهوية أو الماهية. Or we can say originally الماهية أصلها ما. أصلها ما only. But sometimes we say المائية. المائية والماهية, they're the same thing. So the Sheikh says فصل في الماهية وهي لفظة مأخوذة عن ما هو. هل يصح أن تدخل ال على الجمل؟ لا يصح، لكن هذا تسامح، لأن ما هو مترجم عن لغات أخرى. Sidi Harun, you'll have to recap.
Okay, I'll do my best, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we're on the chapter on quiddity. reading from Imam Taftazani's text with the commentary of Sanendaji. So he begins Bismillah Faslun. So he says that quiddity is the last of the subjects discussed and researched with regard to the topic of existence and non-existence, because the research about this about these topics is with regard to their being appropriate to be attributed to one of them. So sorry, the research about quiddity is with regard to being appropriate. I don't have a good translation off the top of my head for Saliha, but appropriate for attributing wujud or adam to mahiyya, and quiddity from this regard is taken from this part. Maybe I can use some help from, like, is derived from the two of them, from existence and non-existence, and then he says that the term mahiyya is an expression that is derived from the original, the jumla, the phrase, or ma huwa, and then we put ma huwa together and make it, and then turn it into a noun, and then we add alif lam, which is appropriate to put before any noun, and then we add the ya with the shadda, which indicates like a profession or an action, so it becomes ma huwa, and then with the ya, and then I guess I forget the term, but the wow is elided, I think, and it becomes mahiyya. Another possibility is that the asl is just ma, and then we would say ma'iyya with the same logic. So that's my quick summary. I just think with the point on wahiyya bihadha al-i'tibar I misread that, I'm sorry. هي بهذا الاعتبار متأخرة عنهما. I'm sorry, I read that as مأخوذة. So وهي بهذا الاعتبار متأخرة عنهما. And so the discussion of mahiyya comes last after wujud and adam. I'm sorry, I misread that, but I think I got the others. I hope that was sufficient.
Great. So the Sheikh says, لأن البحث عنها من حيث إنها صالحة لمعروضية أحدهما، وهي بهذا الاعتبار أي من حيث إنها صالحة لمعروضية أحدهما متأخرة عنهما، صالحة لأن يعرض عليها شيء. And then he says, فإن ماهية الشيء ما به يجاب عن السؤال بما هو، كما أن الكمية ما به يجاب عن السؤال بكم. So as we mentioned last week, the human experience is very familiar with mahiyya. Our language, the way we think, is always assuming that there's a mahiyya, and then we ascribe something to it. We talk about it. We predicate something of it. So how do we get at the mahiyya? We get at the mahiyya from the kasra. So we get at the mahiyya from the kasra. From the kasra, we look at Zayd, we look at Amr, we look at Bakr, we look at Khalid, and we derive through the process of tajreed and taqshir that this is insan. So insan becomes ma'qul awwal. Ma'qul awwal mahawi. And then we look at other creatures, we say this is kalb, this is hisan, this is shajar, this is hajar, this is an angel, this is a devil. Then once we get all these ma'qulat awwal mahawiyya, now we start doing muqayasa. The al-aql or al-zihn, he applies or operates on these ma'qulat primary intelligibles, and Then he says الإنسان ماهية, الشجر ماهية, الحيوان ماهية. فماهية comes as a secondary intelligible. وتعرض للطبائع. فزيد إنسان, that's primary intelligible. Then الإنسان ماهية, secondary intelligible. الشجر ماهية, secondary intelligible. قال ماهية الشيء ما به يجاب عن السؤال بما هو. بما هو. ما الإنسان؟ ما الإنسان؟ So we can, this is the logical essence. ما الإنسان in terms of genus and differential, in terms of جنس وفصل. And the sheikh, or we'll quote someone else that talk about EG, we'll quote EG that talks about الماهية من حيث هي ontological, the ontological essence. ما به الشيء هو. So we can look at this شيء from different angles. We can look at it, ما به الشيء موجود, and then we understand the statement in a particular way. ما به الشيء طويل, we understand it in a particular way. Or we can look at it, ما به الشيء هو. What makes a thing that thing? So this is, the عقل now only notices الشيء من حيث نفسه, without any addition or subtraction, without existence or non-existence, without being tall or short, without being white or black, without any other عوارض. So ما به يجاب عن السؤال بما هو is that which is mentioned in answer to the question, what is it? What is it? ما الإنسان حيوان ناطق. وتطلق غالبا على الأمر المتعقل. So, تطلق غالبا على الأمر المتعقل. والذات والحقيقة عليها, يعني تطلق الذات والحقيقة على الماهية مع اعتبار الوجود. This is now the ontological essence. والكل من ثواني المعقولات, and all of these things, الماهية والذات والحقيقة, they're all secondary intelligible. I think we all know what primary intelligible and secondary intelligibles are, but maybe do you think it's good to mention some of their properties, Sidi Harun?
Sure. That'd be great.
And there is also two concepts that maybe will be of interest. Sometimes we have the two concepts, عروض and اتصاف. Let me switch to my iPad. Yeah. Let me just. So we say that المفاهيم ثلاثة. So the first one is المفهوم الأول الماهوي. المفهوم الأول. So this is the primary intelligible. And the primary intelligible is taken from what is external to the mind directly. So we say زيد إنسان. زيد إنسان. فإنسان is taken directly from what is extramental, from زيد, through a process called تجريد and تشريق and تقشير. And then we do a مقايسة, we do some kind of قياس between all these primary intelligibles. And we extract المفهوم الثاني المنطقي. المفهوم الثاني المنطقي is مفاهيم ذهنية. is مفهوم ذهني. We say الإنسان حيوان ناطق ينتزع الجنس والفصل. And then we have المفهوم الثاني الفلسفي. المفهوم الثاني الفلسفي is not the same as المفهوم الثاني المنطقي. المفهوم الثاني الفلسفي is concerned with نحو من أنحاء وجود الشيء. We only look at some aspects of this thing in terms of its existence. So for example, we say النار علة. So this علة is one aspect of النار. While المفهوم الثاني المنطقي, we're looking at the ماهية of the thing. النار علة. We say زيد ممكن. So الإمكان is نحو من أنحاء نحو من أنحاء زيد. It's one angle of زيد. So المفهوم الثاني الفلسفي looks at some angles, but not all angles at the same time. Only one of the angles. النار علة. النار معلولة. زيد ممكن. زيد واحد. زيد كثير. While المفهوم الثاني المنطقي looks at زيد as حيوان ناطق or الإنسان حيوان ناطق. So we have two concepts, العروض والاتصاف. العروض والاتصاف. No, that's not good. So the word عروض, the term عروض, I'm looking at the محمول. And the word اتصاف, I'm looking at the موضوع. So when I use the word عروض, I'm focusing on the محمول, I'm focusing on the predicate. When I use the word اتصاف, I'm focusing on the subject. فأقول مثلا زيد ممكن. زيد is the subject. ممكن is the predicate. If I want to use these terms عروض and اتصاف أقول زيد اتصف بالإمكان. فالعروض والاتصاف it's the same thing, but whether I'm focusing on the subject or on the predicate. I say زيد متصف بالإمكان or اتصف بالإمكان. And if I want to use the term عروض, then I'm focusing on the محمول. I say الإمكان عرض لزيد. So when I state زيد ممكن, زيد is contingent. I can use two additional terms to describe this relationship. I can say زيد متصف بالإمكان, اتصف بالإمكان. And here I'm focusing on زيد. My focus is زيد. I'm focusing on زيد. Or I can use the word عروض and I say الإمكان عرض لزيد. Now I'm focusing on الإمكان, on the محمول. فboth عروض and اتصاف are describing the same thing. One by focusing on the subject, and the other one by focusing on the predicate. So now if we move to what we were talking about earlier, المفهوم الثاني المنطقي and المفهوم الثاني الفلسفي, we say the following in terms of عروض and اتصاف. المفهوم الثاني المنطقي has this property that عروضه واتصافه where do you think is عروض and اتصاف is? Is it in the ذهن or is it in the outside the ذهن, external to the ذهن? For the مفهوم ثاني منطقي عروضه واتصافه ذهني, only occurs in the mind. المفهوم الثاني المنطقي is only in the mind. It's a logical essence. In terms of its عروض, in terms of the subject as well as the predicate. العروض والاتصاف ذهني. As for المفهوم الثاني الفلسفي, we say اتصافه خارجي وعروضه ذهني. So when we say زيد ممكن, زيد ممكن, اتصافه خارجي because زيد is خارجي. عروضه ذهني because الإمكان is ذهني. As for الإنسان, الإنسان كلي. الإنسان كلي, both عروض and اتصاف are ذهني. الكلية في الذهن والإنسان في الذهن. And these concepts كلي, جزئي, the five universals, الجنس والفصل and all these, هذه مباحث تدرس في علم الكلام أو الفلسفة. But when we get to ilm al-mantiq, when we get to logic, we use these. So logicians is basically a practitioner. As for الكليات الخمس تبحث في علم الفلسفة metaphysically. When we get to logic, the logician will use these terms in a way that serve their purpose, i.e. in a way that they arrange al-jins wal-fasl to get to the mahiyya. So logicians play the role of a practitioner. As for the mabahis themselves, they're studied in different science. They're studied in falsafa, for example. So when we say وتطلق غالبا على الأمر المتعقل، يعني الماهية هي المتعقل الذهني. Oh, Sidi Harun, you want to recap before we?
I could try.
Let's go back to. You said المفاهيم ثلاثة. Those are also المفاهيم يعني المعقولات.
I'm just trying to see where I left off. Okay, so Bismillah. So we mentioned that these three mafahim, the three maqulat, the three intelligibles. So the first intelligible is something that's taken from the external world. So we say Zayd is human. We see a human being in the extramental world, and we through this rational process, tashriq, taqshir, I think was the term, we extract from the actual human in the extramental world and produce the mafhum al-thani, the secondary intelligible, where we then conceive of this concept of human as a universal that can then be applied to any instance that shares in that quiddity. That's for the mafhum al-thani, the amantaki, so the logical secondary intelligible. And then we distinguish between the logic. So if I say Zayd is human, I see a human in the extramental world. Zayd is an actual human being in the extramental world. I say, what is Zayd? Zayd is a human. What is a human? A human is a haywan nautiq. And then that concept of human as haywan nautiq in the mind is a secondary intelligible. And then the mafhum al-thani al-falsafi is a different approach to the concept of the secondary intelligible, where instead of looking at the quiddity of human, we instead look at one aspect of it, like existence or like cause, or some other aspect. So it's more specific. But when we're dealing with the logical secondary intelligible, then we are focused on the quiddity of the thing. What is a human? It's a haywan nautiq. And then Sheikh distinguished between urud and ittisaf. And so as like two different types of attribution. I don't have a good translation for it, but one, it has to do with a perspective.
They're both hamil. They're both hamil.
So we can, okay, so you can still say predication.
الاتصاف والعروض كلاهما حمل.
Okay.
لكن
So,
يختلفان باللحاظ. يعني the angle that we look at it is slightly different.
Okay, so two different types of predication that differ according to the angle that we're looking at it. So the urud is where we're focused on the predicate, and the ittisaf is where we're focused on the subject. So the statement Zayd is mumkin, Zayd is a merely possible thing. There we look on the concept. With urud, we're looking at the predicate. We're looking at imkan. So we say Zayd is mumkin. There we're looking at imkan, that imkan is out of the Zayd, that imkan is attributed to Zayd. And from the angle of the tisaf, then we're looking at the mawdu', at the subject. So when we say Zayd is mumkin, then we're saying that Zayd is attributed with imkan. So Zayd mutasifun bil imkan. And then if we take this concept of urud and ittisaf, excuse me, and we apply it to the two different types of of secondary intelligibles, that's where I was still processing.
We say العروض والاتصاف ذهني. Both are ذهني. Because
Oh,
here
right.
we're talking about الإنسان كلي. For example, كلي is a مفهوم منطقي ثانوي. مفهوم ثاني منطقي.
Right.
معقول ثاني منطقي. And الإنسان is also in the ذهن. And the خارج we only have زيد.
Okay.
الإنسان is معقول أول. But both of these things, العروض والاتصاف ذهني, is only in the mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was the part I was still processing. But yeah, so if we're looking at it from the perspective of ma'qul thani or mafhum thani, then both the urud and itisaf, so both with the predication with regard to subject and predication with regard to predicate is in the mind. So if I say Zayd is human, then I have
No,
then
Zayd as a human doesn't apply here.
Okay, so human is
not معقول. It's not معقول ثاني, right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So human, like a human is حيوان ناطق, right? Then I would say from the perspective of urud, I would say that حيوانية ناطقية is attributable to human. And if I look at it from the perspective, no, I messed that up. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I don't want to waste people's time. I could probably think through it aloud, but I would benefit from it, but I don't know if it's worth everyone else's time. So they both of those perspectives of human as so as rationality and animality being predicable to human, that's entirely in the mind from the logical secondary intelligible perspective, but from the falsafa secondary intelligible perspective, then only the urud perspective is in the mind. So in that case, like rationality and animality is in the mind, but human is kharajian, whereas in the secondary intelligible, both human and animality and rationality were in the mind. I think I said it, but I don't think I said it clearly. That's my quick summary.
جزاكم الله خير.
I'm sure Sidi Sharif and Sidi Mustafa and many others would also have good summaries.
I actually had a question, if I may.
نعم تفضل.
So we said the مفهوم الثاني the عروضه واتصافه كلاهما ذهني, correct?
The منطقي.
Exactly. And the مفهوم الأول اتصافه خارجي وعروضه ذهني. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So اتصافه خارجي means that in reality Zayd exists, obviously, in the real world. حقا والإمكان حكم ذهني. Is that why we're saying that عروضه ذهني? Because we're looking at the...
Yes.
Okay.
And that's الإمكان is معقول ثاني فلسفي.
Okay.
ينتزع من زيد ويحمل عليه.
Okay. جزاكم الله خيرا.
And we call this also عارض ذاتي. When we study like science, we say الموضوع العلمي هو البحث عن عوارضه الذاتية. فالإمكان is عارض ذاتي in this case. So ذاتي في باب البرهان, not في باب إيثاغوجي. And عارض in logic, not in فلسفة. So العوارض الذاتية is يعني الخارج المحمول. لكن we can look at ذاتي in many ways. ذاتي as opposed to as part of إيثاغوجي, or ذاتي as part of برهان. In this case, we're looking at عارض ذاتي as part of برهان when we talk about the subject matter of a science. And we're looking at عرض as per the logicians, not as per the philosophers. Because as per the philosophers, عرض is opposed to جوهر. We're not looking at our الذاتية from this angle. We're looking at our الذاتية from the angle of the logicians, and ذاتي not in terms of Saroji, but in terms of Burhan. قال الشيخ: وتطلق غالبا على الأمر المتعقل. يعني الماهية هي المتعقل الذهني. So we have, for example, we have Zaid, we have Amr, we have Bakr, and we derive insan. And then we have apple tree, orange tree, and we derive shajara. And we have different types of rocks, and we derive حجر. فهذا معقول أول. معقول أول ماهوي، أو مفهوم أول ماهوي. And then we say الإنسان ماهية، الشجرة ماهية، الحجر ماهية، الملك ماهية. هذا معقول ثاني الآن، معقول ثاني فلسفي. فالماهية، قال الشيخ، الماهية تطلق غالبا على الأمر المتعقل. الماهية هي المتعقل الذهني، المتصور في الذهن هو الماهية. والذات والحقيقة تطلق عليها، تطلق على الماهية، لكن مع اعتبار الوجود. Now we're talking about the ontological essence. يعني إذا اتصفت الماهية بالوجود الخارجي، خرجت من عالم الماهية إلى عالم التحقق. Sometimes we call it that, and sometimes we call it حقيقة. So those that read العقائد النسفية, they should be familiar with these things. الماهية ما به يجاب عن السؤال بما هو. If I were to ask ما الإنسان، فأنا أسأل عن حقيقته وماهيته. What am I asking about? I'm asking about, imagine we have a real estate. And we have many things in this, you know, on this piece of land. We have many houses. I'm asking about the address of this house. What is the address of the house where Sidi Harun lives? So when I ask ما هو ما الإنسان, I'm asking about its address. And this address is not shared by anybody else. My house is different than his house. The mahiyya of insan is different than the mahiyya of shajara. i.e., once al-insan occupies this mahiyya, no other entity can occupy the same mahiyya. And it's not up to me to decide what the mahiyya is. أنا أدركها. But I cannot say al-insanu is H2O, 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen. It's not up to me to say this. فإذا قلت حيوان ناطق، أنا الآن حددته، ميزته. And there has to be a had. There has to be a had, because extramentally, everything is finite. We don't have infinite things in front of us. Because it's finite, its had is also, it must have a had. And the answer to what is it is what we call quiddity. And usually when we mention the term quiddity, our mind, the first thing that comes to our mind is al-amru al-ma'qul, al-muta'aqqal. Al-muta'aqqal means only the intellect can reach it. It's not subject to the five senses and not subject to the khayal. يعني آلة الإدراك هي العقل لا الحس ولا الخيال. And sometimes I look at quiddity from the angle of وجود مع اعتبار الوجود. مع اعتبار الوجود الخارجي. فأنا أنظر إلى الماهية في الواقع الخارجي ontologically, not just logical essence, as an ontological essence. يقال له حقيقة وذات. والماهية these terms الماهية والحقيقة والذات, they're all like the ماهية. They're all from ثواني المعقولات. والكل من ثواني المعقولات. من ثواني المعقولات الفلسفية لا المنطقية. أن ثواني المعقولات تعرض للمعقولات الأولى. فأقول الإنسان this is المعقول الأول. ماهية معقول ثاني. فالمعقول الثاني يعرض للمعقول الأول. فدي ماهية دي الذات دي حقيقة they're called معروض. عوارض لحقيقة الإنسان. We can call it أمور إضافية also. Sidi Harun, you want to recap?
So
Does that make sense to everyone? Any questions?
maybe questions would be good.
Yeah, before we recap.
So at the very end, I didn't get, you said الماهية والحقيقة والذات عارضة للماهية. I thought I heard they're عارضة للإنسان or
عارضة أيوة للمعقولات الأولى.
Okay.
م.
يعني مفهوم الماهية والذات والحقيقية كلها ذهنية، فهي عارضة للمعقول الأول الذي هو الإنسان المتحقق في الوجود.
م. الإنسان هو المعقول الأول الذي انتزع من المتحقق في الوجود. If we switch to the iPad, this first column here is what is extramentally. زيد عمرو بكر, apple tree, orange tree, diamond, rocks, pearl, all these are أحجار. And then we have creatures, al-malak, al-shaytan. From the extramental world, we derive المعقولات الأولى. الإنسان, الشجر, as you know, الحجر, الملك. And then بالمقايسة أقول الإنسان ماهية, الشجر ماهية, الحجر ماهية. So now we're moving into معقولات ثانية. والمعقولات الثانية تعرض للمعقولات الأولى.
The one other point, Sheikh Talib, just to make it was just a mode of terminology because you would use the word that and mutahaqqiq, referring to that mahiyya which then has wujud, and so the role that then we would use words like that and mutahaqqiq. I mean, aqid nafsafiyat, well, in some ways it equates those, but is that the distinction between them? One having existence, one not having existence.
Between what and what?
So between mahiyya and that That's what I heard you. I heard the distinction being made that once there's once
technically speaking.
للوجود فصارت الماهية that, or we would say متحقق.
Yeah, technically speaking, when we say mahiyya, it means mafhum. But sometimes we also use it to mean al-mahiyyatu al-mutahaqqiqa. So in this sense, al-mahiyyatu wal-zatu wal-haqiqa, they're synonymous. They become synonymous. لذلك قال هنا وتطلق غالبا على الأمر المتعقل.
And that's how it is in Aqaid al-Nasafiyya, where he'll say these are mutaradif, but here he's indicating غالبا, it's referring to the muta'aqqal.
No. So the combination of the two now gives us the logical and ontological
May I ask an additional question?
اتفضل نعم.
Sheikh, thank you very much. So this is based on your what we see at the moment on the iPad, and it's really my own confusion about the categories we're using, because if you had just asked me the question of, so what is the first column, what are we talking about, the second column, third column, I would have said that the Zaid, Bakr, and so on and so forth were the first intelligibles from which we derived. So in the then we've got insan, shajara, etc. So from which we derived secondary intelligibles, which were falsafi, because the subject exists in reality, but then some of their attributes are mentally processed or conceived. So if you had to ask me, as an exercise, I would have said the first column on the right were the first intelligibles, and then the second column where you put one were for me the second intelligibles, falsafi intelligibles. So I'm wrong, obviously, but I'm just trying to sort of correct my misunderstanding.
Yeah, the term insan does not exist extramentally. Yeah? What exists extramentally are the particulars: Zaid, Amr, Bakr, you, me. Then we look at Zaid, at Amr, at Bakr, at you, and me, and we notice that we share something called insaniya. So this insaniya, insan now, is what we share. You're insan, I'm insan. هذا معقول أول. منتزع من الخارج. When I look at the apple tree, the orange tree, I notice that they share something called the tree. They shared a mahiyya, an essence called the tree. فهذا معقول أول. حجر, etc. And then when I do muqayyid, I do an analogy between the insan and shajar and hajar and malak. I say they all have mahiyya. الإنسان ماهية، الشجر ماهية، الحجر ماهية، الملك ماهية. This mahiyya here, we're moving into معقول ثاني. Second intelligible.
And معقول ثاني الفلسفي. The mahiyya.
الماهية is معقول ثاني فلسفي now.
Okay, I think I got it.
But then where's the معقول الثاني المنطقي?
Yeah, that's the second question.
المعقول الثاني المنطقي is كلي, for example. The term كلي is معقول ثاني منطقي. أقول الإنسان كلي. كلي is معقول ثاني but منطقي.
Like the mantiqi is related to the organizational principles around kulli and dati, whereas the falsafi is about aspects of existence, illa and ma'lul and imkan and the rest.
But wasn't the ثاني منطقي the
الواحد نعم الواحد والكثير العلة والمعلول القدم والحدوث.
But where was the jins in the fasl where we're actually defining the quiddity, I thought that was the معقول الثاني المنطقي, which comes before the falsafi.
أقول الحيوان جنس.
Mhm.
الحيوان جنس.
So where does الإنسان حيوان ناطق come? يعني تعريف الإنسان بأنه حيوان ناطق مركب من الجنس والفصل.
هذا مطابقة تحليلية. حللت الإنسان إلى حيوان وناطق.
So that's still part of number one. It's just the تحليل of it.
وهذا التحليل هو الماهية.
Mhm.
All right, like we can do something on this if you wish, but maybe after. تطلق غالبا على الأمر المتعقل والذات والحقيقة عليها مع اعتبار الوجود والكل من سواء المعقولات. If we go to EG will expand on this. So what we read earlier, تطلق غالبا على الأمر المتعقل والذات والحقيقة عليها مع اعتبار الوجود ما به يجاب عن السؤال بما هو. This is the logical essence. The answer to the question ما هو, what is it, would be the logical essence. It's in the mind. We can move to the ontological essence and we say ثم لكل شيء حقيقة هو بها هو. لكل شيء حقيقة هو بها هو. Everything has a حقيقة, which is that by which a thing is what it is. And people used to spend 3 weeks just on the i'rab of this statement. لكل شيء حقيقة هو بها هو. In the old Azhar 1950s, 1960s, they used to spend 3 weeks, 4 weeks on the possible meanings of this statement, what it could mean, depending on the first who and the second who. And I think Sheikh Naqib al-Attas mentioned at least 2 of them, 2 of those meanings in his book, the Al-Iqamina. So what he's talking about here is the ontological essence. Everything has a haqiqah, which is that by which a thing is what it is. What makes a thing, what makes a thing that thing? Or what makes a thing what it is? Okay. And then he says, وهي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي. This is also from EG in جواهر الكلام. يقول وهي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي. What is EG saying here? EG is saying, حقيقة كل شيء, first of all, is واحدة. حقيقة كل شيء واحدة, i.e. لا تتكرر. and مغايرة, i.e. مباينة, from all other qualities. يعني every ماهية is unique. Because every ماهية has taken place somewhere and says, this is my address, this is me. يعني كل ماهية has its own domain, has its own circle, has its own sphere. كل ماهية لها دائرة واحدة لا تتعدد، وهي مباينة للماهيات الأخرى. So when we say مباينة أن تتميز أن مغايرة، الكثرة فرع التمايز. التمايز يعني التغاير. We have multiplicity. But this particular ماهية is its own ماهية. No other essence can claim this ماهية anymore. فالإنسان غير الملك، غير الحجر، غير الماء. And as a result, we cannot do predication. لا تحمل ذات على ذات. I cannot say الإنسان حجر. Because the ماهية cannot be another ماهية. ماهية has to be its own ماهية. وهي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي. Quiddity qua itself is nothing but itself. So when we look at the ماهية من حيث هي ليست إلا هي, the ماهية is in total isolation. If we were to use a metaphor and compare the ماهية to a person, the ماهية is saying, today I'm not accepting any visitors. And ماهية says, I will never accept another ماهية to predicate me. So in this sense, the ماهية is very grumpy, is a very grumpy person. ماهية here is very protective of its own ماهية. I will not allow any other ماهية to creep into me and change me. هي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي. فليس هناك حمل بين الذوات. ليس هناك حمل بين الماهيات. And then he says, وهي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي. Not only that, it's also مغايرة أن مباينة أن مميزة لما يعرض لها من الاعتبارات. Anything that can predict الماهية is other than الماهية. i.e. الإنسان is other than the وحدة. الإنسان is other than the كثرة. Because الوحدة can predicate الماهية. I can say الإنسان واحد، الإنسان كثير. Anything that can predict the ماهية is other than the ماهية. The ماهية qua itself is nothing but itself. Is nothing. Nothing else can come near it. Because if anything can come near it and becomes part of it, then we cannot predicate the opposite of that thing on the mahiyya. And not only that, تتداخل الواقعيات. The mahaya and the واقعيات will creep into other mahiyat. The identity principle, مبدأ الهوية, as a معيار عقلي and is معيار قهري, معيار that is not up to me. It's outside my control. It's not up to me to decide Zaid is insan. Zaid is insan whether I like it or not. And if I am in the sphere of insan, if I am in the sphere of this particular mahiyya, I cannot be in any other sphere. Quiddity qua itself is nothing but itself. إذا كنت في دائرة الإنسان لا أكون في دائرة أي شيء آخر. من حيث المفهوم، من حيث المعقول. I can be the same thing extramentally. Experimentally, I only have Zaid. Zaid is واحد, Zaid is كثير, Zaid is طويل, Zaid is قصير, Zaid is أبيض, Zaid is أسود. من حيث المصداق قد أتحد في المصداق. لكن من حيث المفهوم, I am my own مفهوم. No other مفهوم can claim me. So إنسانية من حيث هي إنسانية, not from any other consideration, is حقيقة ماهية مغايرة لجميع ما يعرض لها من الاعتبارات. الماهية is different than its properties. Different than any predicates I can predicate the ماهية with. So ماهية من حيث هي, as a part of the ماهية, existence and non-existence is not part of the ماهية. Unity and multiplicity is not part of the ماهية. Universality and particularity is not part of the ماهية. Neither any other اعتبارات are part of the ماهية. The ماهية من حيث هي, quiddity qua itself, is nothing but itself. Does that make sense? So here what the Sheikh is doing, Taftazani and Iji and Tusi, what they're doing is they're looking at the Mahiyya from looking at different layers of Mahiyya. So the intellect can do this. The intellect can look at something on its own without being affected or blemished by any other concept. And one of the benefits of this is it allows me to study it on its own. So I study a child on its own, and I develop early child education principles. I don't study a child as from the angle of being a human. No, I look at the child as a child. When I look at a flower, I see beauty. So I abstract the beauty and I study beauty on its own. Not beauty as a part of the flower, but the beauty as a concept. What makes a thing beautiful? What is beauty? So abstraction gives me this benefit. It allows me to study things on their own. One of the many benefits. قال ماهية الشيء هي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي. So what is the معيار عقلي that allows me to say this is the identity principle. Is مبدأ الهوية. هي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي. Any questions or comments on this? What are your thoughts, Sidi Harun? You can recap, or if there are questions, we can.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could maybe, if you don't mind, I could just recap that second part, and the part that I didn't recap, I could after that then return to it just to clarify a few points, if that's all right with you.
Right.
So what we've just mentioned here from Aliji's statement, is it وَهِيَ مِنْ حَيْثُ هِيَ هِيَ لَيْسَتْ إِلَّا هِيَ, or is it وَهِيَ مِنْ حَيْثُ هِيَ لَيْسَتْ إِلَّا هِيَ? That's actually just a quick question, but anyway, just from the text on the screen, I'm wondering if there's supposed to be.
وهي من حيث هي ليست إلا هي.
Okay, that's the same meaning. Okay, so every quiddity has its own singular sphere, and it's distinct from all other quiddities. So human is other than angel, other than tree, other than water, right? So the quiddity of human is haywan natiq, right? Then this is going to be is rational animal. Then this quiddity is going to be different from whatever the quiddity of tree is. Perhaps I don't have the quiddity off the top of my head, but a growing whatever, a certain type of plant with its particular differentia. So human is different from tree, and the quiddity of one thing is nothing other than itself, and it cannot be shared with any other quiddity. As a result, we cannot predicate one thing to another thing. We can't predicate human and say a human is a tree, because the quiddity of human and the quiddity of tree are distinct from each other. And anything that is predicable of a quiddity is other than the quiddity itself. So when we say, whether it's unity, multiplicity, particularity, we can attribute that, we can predicate that to human, for example, but we can't. But that concept of unity or multiplicity or particularity or so on and so forth is not part of the quiddity of human, or part of the quiddity of whatever it is that we're attributing unity, multiplicity, and particularity to. So again, whatever can be predicated of a quiddity is not quiddity itself. Quiddity cannot be predicated of another quiddity, and whatever is predicated of a quiddity is other than the quiddity. So this is just to emphasize the identity principle here, that a thing is the quiddity here is it the thing itself, or I shouldn't say, sorry, I'll take that back. The quiddity is the quiddity itself, or quiddity qua quiddity is nothing but itself. This is just to emphasize the purely distinct nature of quiddity from all other quiddities. And then if I return to that slide that what you put on the iPad, where you had the column which was the extra mental world, like Zayd, Umur, Bakr, right? We look at these actual existent things in the extra mental world, and we extract from that the concept of insan. That's the primary intelligible. So primary intelligibles will be like looking at an actual human, a bunch of humans, and saying, hey, all of these share in particular qualities. We're going to call those humans. Or we see actual trees in the extra mental world. We extract from that into our mental world the concept of tree or stone or whatever it may be. And then when we look at that catalog of things that are in our primary intelligible world, the ideas in the primary intelligible category, we say, well, one possibility is that we can extract from them and say, well, this insan, if these are all humans and humans are rational animals, then we can extract from that the concept of universal, right? This is how I've understood it. Maybe Sheikh Talay can correct me, right? So then we can extract from that the concept of universal and say insan is a universal that applies to its particulars. And then we can subdivide universals into genus, species, differentia, general accident, and specific accident, and put those together in different ways in order to define these primary intelligibles like insan, such that we can understand that Zayd is a rational animal with his specific additional particular qualities. So the concept of universal is something we extract from the primary intelligible category. And this is where I'm getting a little fuzzy though. That's the mantiki, that's the logical secondary intelligible.
Which one?
When I extract from the concept of insan or shajara or hajar, the concept of universal, right? Just the concept.
هذا منطقي. أيوة. معقول ثاني منطقي.
Yeah, that's معقول ثاني منطقي.
الإنسان يصدق على كثيرين. Oh, it's kulli.
Right.
Kulli.
And then also from that, I can say, from the concept of kulli, I do a taqsim of kulli and say, like, some kullis are shared amongst a number of particulars. Some are specific to them. If I put them, like, so I can have like kulli.
I cannot say Zaydun kulli. I can say al-insanu kulli.
Right.
So that's when we mentioned al-urud wal-ittisafu ذهني. Both have to be ذهني.
Both Zayd in my mind is, or you're saying insan? Sorry, insan. Insan is dhihni, is kulli, and then kulli is dhihni, and that's the mantiki. So, but when I take insan and I say, insan is haywan natik, for example, and I say, well, haywan natik is a mahiyya. So I've extracted the concept of mahiyya from insan by answering the question ma huwa, right? I say, well, when I answer what is insan, I say it's haywan natik. Well, this answer to the question ma huwa is what will, and this haywan, haywaniyya, natiqiyya, these are these essential properties that delimit the sphere of the sphere of what is insan. And when I do that delimiting process, when I answer the question ma huwa, that thing that I'm identifying is what we call the mahiyya, right? And so now I've extracted the concept of
Correct.
mahiyya, which puts it in the level 2 category here, or the ma'kulat thani. But where I was originally thinking is that you were saying that that process of extracting the concept of mahiyya from insan was also mantaqi. But I think you were saying that it was ma'kulat thaniya al-falsafiyya.
Yeah, it's falsafiyya, yeah.
And that's because it's from a more specific angle than it's more specific than just saying it's a universal. It's only looking at it from the angle of answering the question ma huwa. Because I thought you'd said like unity, multiplicity, these were more specific angles, which made them like the falsafy type of secondary intelligible. Is my question clear? I'm sorry, I just sort of did my summary and then sort of ended with the question.
Yes, inshallah, maybe we can elaborate on this next time.
Okay.
I'll try to prepare something. So, but as for the second column here, al-insanu, al-shajar, al-hajar, al-malak, these are the taba'i'. These are the طبيعة الشيء. زي طبيعته إنسان. The apple tree طبيعتها شجر. All these rocks طبيعتهم حجر. هذه الطبائع.
May I ask a question?
Please.
Sheikh, whatever, so we cannot predicate one mahiyya of another mahiyya. So what can be predicated of a mahiyya is what? Is an accident, an arad.
What's that?
I said we cannot predicate one mahiyya of another mahiyya. So I cannot say like a man is a tree or something like that.
Correct.
But there are things I can say about a man, like he's one, or he's white, or he's tall, or whatever. So whatever.
Okay.
So
you're no longer in the identity principle. As soon as you do this, you're no longer in the identity principle. You're no longer in the sphere of mahiyya. If you limit yourself to the sphere of mahiyya, the mahiyya is nothing but the mahiyya. الإنسان من حيث هو ليس إلا هو. But if you say الإنسان طويل, this is now هل المركبة. هل المركبة is one stage beyond هل البسيطة. And عالم الماهية is prior to هل البسيطة and هل المركبة. هل البسيطة is asking the question, does this quiddity exist? And then هل المركبة, is it tall? So I'm assuming it exists and I'm asking, is it tall? Is it short? Is it white? Is it black? So here we're still in the identity principle. In the identity principle, al-insanu insanun, period. That's it. Okay. I don't have a qadiyya yet. This is not a qadiyya. This is not a proposition. عالم القضايا is في عالم التحقق. Even when I say al-insanu hayawanun natiq, this is not a qadiyya. It's not a proposition in the normal sense of proposition. When I say al-insanu insanun, there is no duality. There is no isnayniyya. If I say, for example, al-insanu zaydun alimun, there is a duality here. There is isnayniyya. Because Zayd is something, and alim is an essence that has ilm. And I'm saying Y and X are the same. There is unity and there is distinctiveness. زيد is ذات وعالم ذات متصفة بالعلم وهذه الذات المتصفة بالعلم هي ذات زيد. As soon as I do حمل, there is إثنينية, there is مغايرة, and there is مشاركة, and there is مجانسة. There is duality. But if I say al-insanu insanun, al-insanu insanun, there is duality, but this duality is not real. It's imaginary. I made it up because I don't have an insan X and an insan Y and Y is X. It's I made it up myself. بالادعاء. Yani I invent this concept, al-insanu insanu, just to say something is itself. Nothing other than itself. And I can say al-insanu hayawanun natiqun still بالادعاء. Or they call it حمل أولي, they call it. حمل هو. That the thing is itself. But if we say al-insanu tawilun, al-insanu, I'm not looking at insan now as in its own sphere. I'm looking at insan after it crossed the virtual line of existence and became existence. يعني هنا الإنسان صار مقيدا. But in عالم الماهية is prior to تقييد, prior to qualification, prior to particularization, prior to restricting the ماهية. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Then E.G. says ماهية الشيء فليست من حيث هي quiddity is not qua itself one of the two contradictories. E.G. is saying الماهية من حيث هي. As soon as he says من حيث هي, I'm still in the identity principle. I'm still in عالم الماهية. I'm still in the sphere of ماهية. In the sphere of ماهية, I only look at the ماهية as a ماهية. So if I say الماهية ليست موجودة وليست معدومة, is this joining between the two contradictories? رفع النقيضين or جمع النقيضين? He says no, because at this stage we don't even have propositions. It's meaningless to talk about contradiction at this stage. يعني لا معنى للكلام عن التناقض. تناقض takes place in عالم التحقق, not in عالم الماهية. The principle of non-contradiction is a معيار for عالم التحقق. But when I am in عالم الماهية, in the sphere of ماهية itself, it's meaningless to talk about unity and multiplicity. It's meaningless to talk about tall and short. It's meaningless to talk about moving or not moving, in motion or motionless. فمن حيث هي ليست من حيث هي أحد النقيضين. Actually, it's meaningless to talk about contradictories when we are in the sphere of ماهية, because we are not even in the sphere of propositions to talk about contradictories. Does that make, this is a very important principle. So it allows us to look at things in their own layers without allowing any other layer to interfere and affect our conclusions. قال فليست من حيث هي أحد النقيضين. Quiddity is not qua itself one of the two contradictories. Because at this stage, it's meaningless to talk about contradictories. So if I were to be asked, الإنسان if one were to be asked لو قيل هل الإنسان من حيث هو إنسان كاتب أو غير كاتب I say it's meaningless to talk about كتابة at this stage. It's meaningless to even ask this question. So man, qua man, is he a writer or a non-writer? Is he عالم or جاهل? No, man qua man is nothing but man. So this question, I mean, to start with, this question is meaningless. This question has no meaning when we are in the sphere of Mahiyya. In the sphere of Mahiyya, the Mahiyya is nothing but its own. It's nothing but itself. لا أنها من حيث هي ليست. So the Sheikh says, if you want to put the negation before the حيث, not after the حيث. Because once you put it after the حيث, you have implicitly made taqyid. And it's like you're no longer in عالم الماهية. You have crossed عالم الماهية onto a different realm. That's one thing. The other thing is this proposition that you just made up in terms of logic, we are no longer sure whether it is محصورة or معدولة. Or is محصلة or معدولة. أقول زيد قائم، زيد ليس بقائم. يعني السلب ليس جزءا للموضوع وليس جزءا للمحمول. Is not part of the subject, is not part of the predicate. The not, the negation is applied to the jumla, to the proposition. لكن the معدولة, the ليس becomes a part, it could be mistaken as part of the subject or the predicate. And that's not what we mean here. If I were to say الإنسان من حيث هو إنسان ليس طويلا وليس قصيرا، ليس A and ليس non-A. He says, don't do this. Don't put the negation after ليس. Sorry, don't put the negation after the qua. Put the negation before the qua. What do we do? نسلب كل شيء قبل الحيثية لا بعدها. We apply the negation prior to the حيثية, prior to the qua, not post qua. Does this make sense?
Sheikh, can I ask a quick clarification question?
تفضل نعم.
So you're saying we don't say human as human is not tall nor not short, right? Instead, we should put the negation for the qua. Like, does that mean that we would say human is not tall or short as human? Is that?
Yeah, we say a human is not qua human, tall or short.
Oh, okay. It's not.
من حيث هو human. يعني من حيث هو human, this question of tall and short, which is a qaid, which is a qualifier, it doesn't make any sense because we're still in the sphere of mahiyya.
Okay, so we don't say human as human is not tall nor not short. Rather, we should say human is not qua human, tall or short.
So we say الإنسان ليس من حيث هو إنسان alif or non-alif.
Okay.
But we don't say الإنسان من حيث هو إنسان. يعني الإنسان باعتبار الإنسانية، الإنسان من حيث هو إنسان ليس ألفا ولا non ألف.
So yeah, that's the second point about the ma'dula, right? Which
that could be a معدولة.
right.
That could be a معدولة. And if it's a معدولة, then it becomes تقييد. So it's no longer a negation. It's actually an affirmation. It becomes an affirmation, i.e., you're no longer in the realm of mahiyya itself. You've crossed to a different realm.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes,
as well?
please go ahead.
So if I'm just trying to sort of understand what is the whole purpose of this category of mahiyya. If, as I think I understood, the sphere of mahiyya, if we're not at a stage of predication, at a stage of contradiction, at a stage of anything, then what do we do with mahiyya except saying insan is insan or zaid is zaid and full stop? What do we do with this category? I mean, how is that helpful for us? Because it's once you've said zaid is zaid, then you're done, and then you move to something else. Or am I missing something on the category of mahiyya?
It is very helpful, and inshallah we'll see that.
Okay.
But it's also helpful in the sense it allows us to train our mind how to separate things and think within each layer on its own, without allowing our thoughts to interject and distort our thinking. So he's going to go now into different stages of abstraction of mahiyya, and he's going to look at it from not phases or stages, but divisions and layers, until he gets to the layer of tahaqquq or predication and propositions. That's okay. I think the idea here, if we're confused, then we're on the right track.
Okay, good.
Yeah, this is like pure math. You say, what's the benefit of this theorem or this corollary? Oh, it has applications, but we can wait for the applications at this time. But is the concept clear? خلاص. So now he's going on the different aspects of consideration of quiddity. So on the different consideration of quiddity, I can look at quiddity from different angles. So I can look at, I think here we're going to read the sharh. Let me see. All right, yes. So mahiyatu shay'i, he says, quiddity of a thing may be considered, this is just a consideration, as being conditioned by something. بشرط شيء وبشرط لا شيء ولا بشرط شيء. So how familiar are we with these concepts? I'm sure you've heard them before, but how familiar are you with them? So I'll use some metaphors to make them, to breathe life into them, inshallah. بشرط شيء, بشرط لا شيء, لا بشرط شيء. How familiar are we with these concepts? Sidi Harun. Sidi Harun knows these concepts. Yeah.
I love these concepts.
You
I
love
spend a lot of
these
time thinking about them.
Good, good. طيب. So the first one, وقد تؤخذ بشرط شيء وتسمى المخلوطة ولا خفاء في وجودها. He said بشرط شيء may be considered as being a quiddity of a thing, may be considered as being conditioned by something. As soon as we say conditioned by something, it seems that I'm no longer in the sphere of Mahiyya itself. I've now crossed onto a different realm. It's called mixed, makhluta. And he said, it is clear that it has existence because I'm no longer in the sphere of Mahiyya. In the sphere of Mahiyya, the concept of existence or non-existence, they're not even considered. And then he says, quiddity of a thing may also be considered with a negative condition. بشرط لا شيء. So here I'm putting a shart. In the previous one, I'm putting a condition. قد تؤخذ بشرط شيء may be considered as being conditioned by something. So there is a condition. The second one, with a negative condition, there is a condition, but the condition is negative. بشرط لا شيء. It says, if you look at me, I do not allow, this is, you can look at me on the condition that nothing else can come near me. وبشرط لا شيء وتسمى المجردة. So this is now pure tajreed, pure abstraction, pure mahiyya. With a negative condition, it is called divested. It has no existence in the mind, let alone in the external world. Because even if it were to exist in the mind, that's arid. That's arid. That's like a predicate. I can predicate this over this mahiyya. But this mahiyya is saying you cannot predicate anything. I do not allow any predication at this stage. It's called divested. It has no existence in the mind, let alone in the external world. So it's mujarrada, complete mujarrad. And the Sheikh said it has no existence in the mind, let alone in the external world, i.e., the Platonic forms are excluded. We don't even consider them, he's saying. We don't have a pure mahiyat that exists somewhere in alam al-musul or in the forms as per Plato. So Iji and Taftazani and Tusi will negate alam al-musul. Iji explicitly in Mawaqif, he will present an argument, then at the end he will say, فَبَطَلَ عَالَمُ الْمُسُلِ. For these reasons, alam al-musul is invalid. The third consideration, وَلَا بِشَرْطِ شَيْءٍ. لا بشرط. Whether it's shay or no shay. And with no condition whatsoever. Whether this condition is conditioned by something or conditioned by negative condition. Or with no condition. And as such, it is more general than the mixed quiddity. This is like mubham. It's indeterminate. It has existence due to it being the same as the latter extramentally. They are distinct only in the mind, but extramentally, there may be اتحاد في المصداق. قال الإمام المصنف رحمه الله تعالى قال وهي قد تؤخذ بشرط شيء ولا خفاء في وجودها. This is the first consideration. قال قد تؤخذ الماهية بشرط شيء. تؤخذ يعني تعتبر في العقل. نسلط عليها نور العقل. تؤخذ بشرط شيء. There is something now accompanying it. It's not an abstract concept on its own. No, it's conditioned by something. تؤخذ بشرط شيء يعني بشرط أن يقارنها أحد عوارضها أي المقارنة للعوارض. قال وهي قد تؤخذ بشرط شيء أي بشرط المقارنة للعوارض. فتسمى المخلوطة يعني ما هي زائد عارض. There's a quantity plus عارض يعرض عليها. Remember the two terminology الاتصاف والعروض. تؤخذ بشرط شيء يعني مقارنة مقرونة مختلطة mixed with one of the characteristics, one of its characteristics, i.e. one of its characteristics after it crosses the realm of mahiyya and after it crosses onto a different realm. فتسمى المخلوطة. Why? لخلطها مع العوارض. Now he's looking at the mahiyya now in different stages or different phases of abstraction. And this stage here or this phase is when the mahiyya is mixed. And he says ولا خفاء في وجودها. لا خفاء في وجودها i.e. both mentally and extramentally. لا خفاء في وجودها فإن وجود الأشخاص في الخارج بين كزيد وعمر من أفراد الإنسان. فإن وجود اسم إن بين خبر إن. فإن وجود الأشخاص في الخارج بين كزيد وعمر من أفراد الإنسان. So now الماهية هذه توجد وجودا خارجيا من خلال مصادقها. So now الماهية في ضمن الأفراد بل هي حقيقة الأفراد جزء من الأفراد. يعني نحن لا نكون إلا إذا كان فينا حياة وفينا استعداد للفهم. We are living being, rational beings. وفينا شيء آخر and something else. قال ولا خفاء في وجودها. And as for the extramental وجود, it's clear. قال كزيد وعمر بين كزيد وعمر موجودة ضمن الأفراد ضمن المصادقات. And also موجودة ذهنا because we can extract from the kharij and we can look at it separately on its own. The next one is وقد تؤخذ بشرط لا شيء. قد تؤخذ الماهية قد تؤخذ بشرط لا شيء. So what have we done here? Here we say all the عوارض go away. نحذف عنها نبعد عنها كل العوارض. We tell all the predicates go on vacation. We don't need you anymore. We're going to look at the ماهية as is without any عارض. لا بشرط. لا بشرط يعني بشرط لا أي من الحمل. There is no حمل here. قال وقد تؤخذ بشرط لا شيء أي الخلو عن العوارض واللواحق. يعني قد تؤخذ بشرط الخلو عن العوارض واللواحق. أي إيه no more حمل. So I'm looking at the ماهية as ماهية without any predicates. And if anything were to be added to it or superimposed on it, it would be an additional thing. It would be additional to it, because quiddity qua itself is nothing but itself. So anything that we could add to it must be additional. It cannot be part of it. But when can we add to it? We can add to it in مبدأ الجوهرية, not in مبدأ الماهية. We can add to it in the substantial principle, not in the identity principle. So we can look at the ماهية as a pure ماهية, pure abstracted ماهية. And we forget everything else. We forget all the predicates. Not only that, the ماهية here is putting a shart, putting a condition on me. Says, my condition is you look at me as is, and I do not allow you to predicate me of anything. So here the ماهية is very, very grumpy. ماهية is very, very grumpy. It says, you know, I want to be on my own. Today, I will allow no visitors. No predicate can come and visit me and predicate me. وتسمى المجردة. تسمى المجردة. This is like طبيعة عقلية, pure intellection, pure abstraction, pure quiddity. And the Sheikh will says, لا توجد في الأذهان فضلا عن الأعيان. لا توجد في الأذهان فضلا يعني لا توصف. هنا الاتصاف. لا توصف بأي منهما. Because if we were to describe ماهية as existent in the mind, هذا عارض. And ماهية says, I don't want any عارض now. فماهية as ماهية معناها خال من كل هذا. The meaning of ماهية مجردة is free of all these predicates. يعني we abstract it, we extract it, and we look at it, and we consider it as is. But we do not describe it as existent in the mind or existent somewhere else. Now, of course, if we want to judge it, if we want to study it, we have to bring it to the mind to study it. But it does not exist in the mind. When we want to issue a judgment about it, when I say المجردة لا توجد في الأذهان فضلا عن العين, this is a judgment. Now, to make this judgment, I have to have تصور in order to make this حكم. But Taftazani is saying it does not exist in the mind. When I make a judgment, I bring it to the mind in order to judge it. Does that make sense? Now, some ulama may say it exists in the mind. وهذا تسامح. لا نصفها لا بالوجود الذهني ولا الخارجي. يعني طبعا هي صالحة لأن توجد في الذهن. لكن if we were to put a condition of تجرد تام, full abstraction, complete purity, it means we're expelling and we're eliminating all these awarid, including the arid of existing in the mind, including the arid of existing outside. فالتجرد, pure abstraction, is to be free of everything. Mahia here is saying, I'm very grumpy. I do not allow you to look at any other. Mahia, I do not allow you to look at any other predicates. Just look at me. This is like a very jealous wife. Like, don't look at any other woman. Look only at me. فأنظر إليها وحدها خالية من كل شيء مجردة عن كل شيء. And as such, يعني, we should not expect this ماهية مجرد to exist anywhere, neither in the mind nor external to the mind. Yes, it can exist in the mind when we allow ourselves to be heedless and we forget this concept. And we think that it exists in our mind. The Sheikh says, لأن الوجود قال وقد تؤخذ بشرط لا شيء. بشرط لا, I'm putting a condition that I'm very grumpy. Nothing else is allowed to visit me today. بشرط لا شيء أي الخلو عن العوارض واللواحق. وتسمى المجردة لتجردها عن كل العوارض واللواحق. ولا توجد في الأذهان فضلا عن الأعيان. لأن الوجود في الذهن سواء أطلقت العوارض أو قيدت، سواء أطلقت العوارض أو قيدت بالخارجية من العوارض، فإن الكون في الذهن من العوارض التي لحقت الصورة الذهنية بحسب الخارج، إذ العوارض الذهنية ما جعله الذهن قيدا للشيء بأن يعتبر له عارضا ويلاحظه له، والشيء الذي نفرضه موجودا في الذهن عرض له في نفس الأمر كونه في الذهن من غير أن يعتبر الذهن عارضا له. وأما الحكم عليها باستحالة وجودها. Now to make this حكم, you have to bring it to the mind in order to make the حكم. You have to have some تصور of it in order to make the حكم. But it doesn't exist in the mind, he's saying. وأما الحكم عليها باستحالة وجودها ولا حكم على الشيء إلا بعد تصوره، فلأنك إذا تصورتها كانت من حيث ذاتها مجردة ومقابلة للمخلوطة، ومن حيث وجودها في الذهن قسما من المخلوطة، فيصح الحكم عليها باستحالة الوجود من حيث ذاتها.
Sheikh Tal, would you be able to clarify the difference between what the base level of tasawwur that we have before, as we make any salbi judgment, any judgment of negation, there's some level of tasawwur of it. Like as if somebody said, don't think of a white car or a car that's white. Then in every salb there is something that we're putting forward first to make salb of. So here he's acknowledging this.
What do you think the tasawwur is? So
The
you asked a
tasawwur-
question. Can you answer your own question?
I don't know if I can answer. I'm trying to. It seems to
just make tasawwur of what tajreed is. Complete tajreed. If you make tasawwur of this concept, mujarrada, you can issue a judgment on it.
Like the tasawwur here would be the extraction of that qualification, of that qaid from of that shart from the original mawdu'. It would be to extract it. Maybe that's one way to look at the tasawwur. Now you can now you're seeing it mujarrad, and you're seeing it in this form divested of the quality. But it seems like there's still it seems like here that the tasawwur here could include a conception where you're still separating it. There's still a process of separation, of tajreed that's happening. And so before the tajreed happens, there's a concept of you're thinking of the negative of the qualification, and you're thinking of it as being part and parcel and predicated upon the mawdu'. So that's part of the little. I'm still unsure of.
Can you comment, or maybe someone else can answer? Let's have a discussion. Sidi Sharif or Sidi Marcelo, Sidi Harun, and whoever else is present.
It's like, don't think of the gorilla in the room, or don't think of a gorilla, and then you're thinking of the gorilla in the room, and then you extract the gorilla from the room, and then the room is now mujarrada or something like that. That is an example.
But is the concept of mujarrada clear? So I have the mahiyya and I have the awarid, and I start abstracting. I start peeling.
Yeah. So the final.
I peel the layer of wahda and kasra. I peel the layer of tawil and qasir. I peel the layer of existence and non-existence. I peel all layers until I'm left with pure abstraction.
So
and
yeah,
I peel the layer of existence in the mind and non-existence in the mind. I peel the layer of existence externally or non-existing. Sorry, not existing externally. I peel all these layers. And if you can think of a layer, peel it and throw it away. And ask yourself, what am I left with? And if you're left with just the mahiyya on its own, then you're there. But you also have to imagine that you're not with the mahiyya, it's on its own.
But then mahiyya is nothing.
Mahiyya is mahiyya.
If we've peeled everything out.
Peeled everything else, we're only left with the mahiyya as a mahiyya. Only left with insan.
Is that the mahiyya min haythu hiya we were talking about just now?
That's it, yeah, that's the mahiyya min haythu hiya hiya. Naam.
I think it's helpful.
Then we're left with the.
So if I were to consider the mahiyya, like that's why in some other books like Tajreed and Mawaqif, EJ will not bother saying these things. He will say, توجد في الأذهان. يعني هناك معتبر، هناك مدرك يتمثل الماهية في ذهنه. يعني هي الماهية ليست موجودة في الذهن، مفهوم الماهية هو الموجود في الذهن. يعني الطبيعة ليست موجودة في الذهن. إنسان is not in my mind, but the concept of إنسان is in my mind. فأتمثل الماهية في ذهني وأنظر إلى العوارض. لما الشيخ عندما قال الشيخ قال what did he say؟ إذ العوارض الذهنية ما جعله الذهن قيدا للشيء بأن يعتبر له أو يعتبر له، إذا للمعلوم أو للمجهول. We can read it both ways. بأن يعتبر له، إذن هناك معتبر، هناك مدرك يتمثل الماهية في الذهن وينظر إلى العوارض، بأن يعتبر له عارضا. إذن اعتبر له عارضا ويلاحظه له. إذن لاحظ العارض. والشيء الذي نفرضه موجودا في الذهن عرض له في نفس الأمر. كونه في الذهن، كونه بضم النون، من غير أن يعتبر الذهن عارضا له، يعني ليس الذهن الذي يعرض له، وإنما الإدراك الذهني هو الذي يعرض له. And then he continued: وأما الحكم عليها باستحالة وجودها. الآن هو الآن عندما قال وأما الحكم عليها باستحالة وجودها, what is he doing here? What is Sanandaji doing? Any idea? He's bringing an اعتراض. He's raising an objection. He said, if what you said is true, then how can we issue a judgment باستحالة وجودها? And you're saying it does not exist in the mind, and it does not exist experimentally. How can you issue a judgment? How can you issue a حكم? وأما الحكم عليها باستحالة وجودها ولا حكم على الشيء إلا بعد تصوره. فلأنك هذا رد على الاعتراض. الآن he began his reply to the اعتراض. وأما الحكم عليها باستحالة وجودها ولا حكم على الشيء إلا بعد تصوره، هذا اعتراض. فلأنك إذ تصورتها أو فلأنك إذا تصورتها، الآن الرد على الاعتراض. فلأنك إذا تصورتها كانت من حيث ذاتها مجردة ومقابلة للمخلوطة، ومن حيث وجودها في الذهن I have to bring it to the ذهن to issue a judgment. As soon as I bring it to the ذهن, it becomes a مخلوطة, because now I have a عارض. So now it has وجود. وجود can be experimentally or mentally. So if it has وجود, it's no longer pure. It's no longer in the sphere of Mahiyya itself. It has crossed onto a different sphere, the sphere of existence, some kind of existence. قال ومن حيث وجودها في الذهن صارت قسما من المخلوطة فيصح الحكم عليها. And now we can issue a judgment. فيصح الحكم عليها باستحالة الوجود، باستحالة الوجود مطلقا ذهنا وخارجا mentally and experimentally من حيث ذاتها per se، من حيث ذاتها as is. Does that make sense? You need to sit, I think, on your own and go over it. And if you find yourself like too much bothered by لا توجد في الأذهان فضلا عن الأعيان, just say خلاص توجد في الأذهان and accept it as مجردة.
Sheikh, may I say make a point or?
You can make a point and a recap if you want as well.
Okay, okay. So it's helpful just to think about, and please correct me, Sheikh, if I misspeak, but what we're talking about here is there's two things to understand. One is like mahia as the object of these three kind of viewpoints, and then there's the three viewpoints themselves. So we could take this bishart shay, bishart la shay, and la bishart shay, and we can apply that to other things, not just like the concept of mahia. Here we're trying to understand mahia, right? But we could say like, what is a car? And we could, well, we're not just, I mean, of course this enters into the realm of mahia from an angle, but if we say like, what is a car? And you were to consider it with the condition of like, maybe like, for example, like what is that car? Right? Then you've got the mahia of car, you have the concept of car, and you've got some specificity, and you've put all those things together. I'm having a hard time getting out of the mahia mode, but like there's this, for understanding a concept, we use bishart shay, bishart la shay, and la bishart shay. And so bishart shay is when there's a condition on how we're considering it. When we say bishart la shay, we're trying to think of it mutlaqan, right? We're trying to think of it without any relationship to anything else. No conditions. We're not answering, does it exist or not exist? We're not, yes, we're not, does it exist, does it not exist? Is it big, is it small, is it here, is it there? We're just thinking of the abstracted concept of whatever it is we're considering. And then we say, which we haven't got to, but la bishart shay, unconditioned, I mean, I guess we haven't got it, so I won't summarize that. But the point is, we would apply that to anything that we're trying to consider from these three viewpoints. So then when we say we're trying to understand mahia, we're trying to define and discuss and understand the concept of mahia. And so if we want to understand mahia, we can understand mahia bishart shay, right? So we can think of it as conditioned by something. So now we're no longer that sort of pure sphere of mahia. We're thinking about something that actually exists in the extramental world and wondering about its mahia, right? So if we like Zaid is insan, we're thinking of the mahia of insan, and we're also thinking about the specific aspects of Zaid. And so Zaid actually exists along with the mahia of insan, with it, because he's a human. And then in our minds, we have the concept of we have the concept of the mahia, as well as the mushakhasat, like the specific attributes of Zaid. But when we try to think of mahia with the negative condition, divested, then we're just thinking of the concept of mahia, right? And we're saying that this like divested concept of mahia with no application to any specific individual in the extramental world, like it's just the concept of mahia, and not connected to any judgments. We're not saying that the mahia exists or doesn't exist, is here or there, is the mahia of that specific thing or this particular group of things. We're just considering the concept of mahia without any other qualifications. And there we don't even talk about it being in the mind or not in the mind. And here's the point that maybe the sticking point, maybe I'm just completely wrong, but maybe if I'm right, then I think the sticking point is we're saying that, well, we're thinking about the concept of mahia so that we can understand it. We're trying to think of the concept of mahia divested of any other qualities or conditions. Well, isn't that in the mind? Like there, I think we've switched to our personal conception of trying to conceive of mahia mujarradan. But that's different from just thinking of our personal thought about al mahia bishart la shay or mujarradan an ay shay. That personal, of course, that thought in our mind exists, but that's not what we're looking at. We're not thinking about our thinking process right now. We're just trying to conceive of the concept of mahia without any other qualifications. But when we think of the mahia of the tree outside my window, I think of what is a tree, and I also think of there is an actual tree there. And so there's both the extramental existence of that mahia as well as the mental existence, because we don't have that condition of divestment. Or sorry, I shouldn't say condition, because we're not trying to think of it as divested of any other conditions. So like bishart shay is to consider a concept plus, is to consider mahia in this case, right? Along with some other condition mixed with it, right? So we think about the tree and its qualities, or we think about mahiyya, the mahiyya of the tree and its qualities and its particular qualities. We think of the concept of mahiyya and whether or not it exists in our mind or doesn't exist. All of that is bishart al-shay. But when we just try to consider the concept of mahiyya without any other consideration, then that phrase, I think, like la tujad fil adhan fadlan an al-a'yan, because there are no a'yan, right? There's no a'yan that we're considering in this particular case. We're just considering the concept of mahiyya. And I think that's as far as we've gotten, right? I don't think we really got to explaining the wala bishart shay. I don't know if that's helpful or a waste of time or or incorrect, but I hope it was helpful and I hope I was right.
Yeah, jazakumullah khairan.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. The next one, قال وقد تؤخذ لا بشرط شيء. وقد تؤخذ لا بشرط شيء. Let me switch to my iPad. وقد تؤخذ لا بشرط شيء. So here the word شيء قال وقد تؤخذ لا بشرط شيء. This is now we're looking at ماهية.
I just had a question when you thought we were going to be finishing today.
We can stop now if you want.
Maybe we can ask other people. I thought it was 2 hours, but
Yeah, 2 hours. It's 10:30 now. Okay, 2.5 hours. Apologies for going over time. I need to put an alarm for next time. Okay, let's stop here then. Inshallah, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Any final comments or thoughts?
Could I ask, because people do have to run, there's the recording, and we don't have to do this full section, but could you perhaps just give like a 1 or 2 minute summary just to have, so I think it'd be helpful for anyone who hasn't studied these three perspectives, maybe to have all three of them clear enough so that when we come back to it next week in detail, it'll kind of fit together better over the course of the week, I think, if people understand, if everybody has a firm grasp on la bishart shay. And I need the review as well, if you wanted it. 5 minutes, 3 minutes.
as we Jazakumullah khairan. Bisharti la, it's very grumpy mahiyya, says I'm putting a condition, nothing can come near me. Okay, now the mind, as Sidi Harun, when he recapped, he said the mind will start peeling until it gets to the mahiyya on its own. And then the mind say, okay, I'm also going to forget that I've seen it. And mahiyya is on its own is complete tajarrud, complete abstraction. هذا بشرط لا. And بشرط لا is very important. And this concept is very important because we're going to go into أجزاء الماهية later on and say الإنسان حيوان ناطق. This حيوان, is it بشرط لا or بشرط شيء or لا بشرط? And if we were to take الجنس بشرط لا, what happens? If we were to take الفصل بشرط لا, what happens? If we were to take الفصل بشرط شيء, what happens? لا بشرط, what happens? So here we're looking at the mahiyya on its own. Then we're going to go into أجزاء الماهية and apply these concepts on أجزاء الماهية. So here the concept لا بشرط شيء, this is, we're going to look at the mahiyya. It's a different consideration. لا بشرط شيء. This is indeterminate. There's ibham. There's ambiguity. It's indeterminate. But if we were to use a metaphor and compare it to a person, we say this person is very open-minded. The mahiyya here is a very open-minded mahiyya. This mahiyya is saying, I accept all visitors. You can come and predicate me. لا بشرط شيء is saying you can come and predicate me. I'm not putting any condition. لا بشرط. And شيء here, it means positive as well as negative. Let me switch to my iPad. Oh, you see my iPad, right? So شيء تشمل الإيجابي والعدمي. يعني لا بشرط شيء ولا بشرط لا شيء. I'm not putting any condition, whether it's a شيء or no شيء. So لا بشرط شيء ولا بشرط لا شيء. And if I go to a chart, this would be the chart. So there's a ماهية بشرط شيء. This is مخلوطة. بشرط لا شيء. This is the مجردة. And لا بشرط, this is the مطلقة. أي لا بشرط شيء ولا بشرط لا شيء. I'm not putting any condition. Today is an open house. You can come and visit me. And that's a concept we'll explore next time, inshallah. So لا بشرط is very open-minded. بشرط لا is very grumpy. بشرط شيء is saying I've already got my address and my house and I'm going to live there. And it's a very particular house. It's a very particular person or table or tree. Because it's makhluta. Now it has all the particularities that it needed to be distinct from any other particulars. So we're looking at the mahiyya as it exists, as it is part of makhluta, as on its own, as no part of anything, not even the mind, not even outside to the mind, and it's mujarrad, a complete abstraction and complete purity. And we're also going to look at the mahiyya. The mahiyya can become very indeterminate and very open-minded. Say, you know what? I'm not going to put any condition. Any arid can come, as long as the arid is suitable, I'll accept him. It's like when someone wants to get married, says, I want to get married to a Muslim. You say, all right, do you want educated, non-educated? He says, no, I'm not putting any condition. A Muslim. Short, tall, not putting any condition. Age, requirement, no requirement. Like this is la bishart. I asked Sidi Harun, find me a job. Find me a job. What kind of job? I'm not putting any condition, just find me a job. So the mahiyya here is very open-minded. It's not putting any condition. And now we can play with it. So al-mutlaqa actually encompasses both al-makhluta and al-mujarrad. And if it were to exist, it only exists in the makhluta, because the mujarrad does not exist, neither in the mind nor extramentally. That's the gist of what we're going to cover next time. I think it's 10:30 now. Let's stop here. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Does this help?
Jazakallah khair. This chart is it's worth, should be written in gold, mashallah. It's very helpful. Sheikh, can I just ask a question for the recording and also for just to cover next week before it gets lost, because it's somebody sent me in the chat just a question about the maqulat al-ashara in relation to the maqulat al-thaniya, and whether or not the maqulat al-thaniya the maqulat al-ashara are min al-maqulat.
In the chat you said?
Yeah, but it's a direct message, so I'm just reading it off the chat.
Okay.
And I think something has.
So let's answer that next time.
Okay.
Send it to me as on telegrams, and we'll go over it next time, inshallah.
Okay, I will copy it and send it.
Inshallah.
Jazakumullahu khairan.
طيب جزاكم الله خيرا إن شاء الله. We'll see you next time. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله
وعليكم السلام
وبركاته.
ورحمة الله.
عليكم السلام.